I've proven that I can read the future again, and I can't read the future. I can't. What I have is an ability to observe and take a cynical look and an inquisitive eye at the machinations that carry on in society. And when you do this without hysteria, you can. It seems like you're predicting the future, but all you're really doing is exposing the playbook of the globalists without any kind of emotional attachment. It's purely examination. So when I talk about things like the current events in Eastern Europe, I have absolutely no political skill in that game. I'm not left wing, I'm not right wing, I'm actually beyond politics. And what I like to observe is the psychological, sociological, and the cultural elements surrounding it. And by doing this, you get a much better ability to be able to formulate possible potential scenarios which may occur in the future based upon what you've witnessed in the past. So today I'm getting messages saying, boy, Thomas, you're spooky how on the money you are and how you called it. You know, the other day when I said that the refugee centres in Poland at the Polish and Romanian borders, or all the countries that are on the border with the Ukraine, would be flooded with all manner of war refugees looking for asylum, because there's large numbers of stateless people, mostly Africans and Middle Easterners in Eastern Europe, and they will use the Ukrainian crisis as an opportunity to get themselves into a country and taken care of. That's not something I'm against. I don't care what part of the world or what color your skin is or what your religion or your language is. Just leave me alone. You be nice to me and we'll get on great. But I do have a problem with the dishonesty of the whole thing. And I don't care about the Irish and other countries and British and others have been duped in to taking Ukrainian refugees. I said they were more likely to get Islamabad Mulfasa from, Dar es Salaam, or, marigold blossom flower Ugadi from Uganda or whatever. And so they sent me reports from the first processing of the Ukrainian refugees happening at a centre in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, which is a very beautiful place. I went on holiday there once, near the Bavarian Alps in southern Bavaria. Beautiful part of the world. Summers there are gorgeous. It's like a Mediterranean country almost, with huge high mountains. And not far from Munich. So they were all brought in through there, presumably through Austria. The photographs show predominantly African-looking people, African Ukrainians, and even the people who run the centre remarked in the local media that they were very surprised how few people that showed up at the centre transported from the Polish borders and Romanian border through Austria were actually Ukrainian. I told you. I told you. So those of you Irish who are opening your doors, Mo Casa, Yo Casa, wherever the Irish version would that be, unshocked, shocked, sorry, whatever, you cannot complain. Remember, when some guy from the Middle East with 3 wives and 10 kids, all called Mohammed, comes to your front door as Ukrainian refugees. Because this was always going to happen. There's 2 reasons for this. One, I believe that the globalists, they wanted a way to nationalize or whatever, or give sanctuary to these disenfranchised people in Eastern Europe. It also solves the problem. You see, there's a very racist in many eastern parts of Eastern Europe. It gets a lot of dark skinned people out of Eastern Europe and into Western Europe, and you can do nothing about it. A refugee is a refugee. As far as it doesn't matter what the circumstances are, a refugee is a refugee, no matter what they say. So literally, all they have to do to be a Ukrainian refugee is arrive at the border station in Poland or Romania and say they're a Ukrainian war refugee. Say, oh well, yeah, they you won't even ask them like, well, you don't look like a Ukrainian because that would be considered racist. But if it ever come up, they'd say, well, we were living in Kiev when the bomb started landing, and this kind of thing, and humans do things like this. That's what people do. We don't live in a world, so it's the dishonesty of it that bothers me. Now, I don't have any sympathy for any Irish, British, or any family who, because a lot of them think they're going to, who signed up for this, and then suddenly an African or a Syrian or some other family arrives, Afghan family, arrives at the front doorstep as Ukrainian refugees, and then has to completely culturally adapt to them. You have dog like rat, dog like rat. This kind of thing. When that happens, when the guys from the Middle East who consider dogs, your pet dog, and a rat in the sewer to be the same thing because of their religion, and they go dog is rat, dog is rat. You won't, you might find yourself in a difficult position then, or you might find you cook pork, no cook pork in my house. In this house, no cook pork. You might find that when you had all these pork products ready for the arriving Ukrainian refugees, that Islam Malfasa, it's not Sharia. It's Haman. It's not halal. And I won't feel any sympathy for you. None. You thought you were going to get yourself a Bond girl. So there'll be lots of Irish perverts and UK perverts who think they're going to get themselves some honey. And I think those. Did you see all those messages all over the media, all over Reddit and everywhere, saying I was just at the refugee centre for on the Polish border, and it's like one Bond girl after the next. I think that was the globalists who fed that stuff out there. So you have all the losers over here thinking, I'm going to get myself a fucking hot Ukrainian Bond girl, and then Mulfasa Islamabad shows up with his 3 wives and 10 kids called Muhammad, going, you eat pork, no pork. You have dog is rat, famine. That's what's going to happen. I don't feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for you. And yeah, what can you do? What can you do? Well, I didn't have a crystal ball and predict what was going to happen at the receiving centre in Garmisch-Partenkirchen in Munich, in Bavaria. And because I have a cynical cold eye. I also, let me talk about the sanctity of your home. In my last book that I wrote, Sorcery, the Invocation of Strangeness, I said the most sacred space that you can have is your home. This is why our ancestors went to extremes to protect their homes spiritually as well as every other way. And this included, like you see, I think the Jews have that little thing with the scroll on the side of the door, the mezuzah. That's to protect the threshold from evil energies. In Ireland, it was very common for the old Irish ladies to wash their doorstep constantly while saying a prayer to Bridget, and also to clean their fireplace, because they were seen as two entry houses for evil forces to come into the home. Your home is your ultimate sanctuary. And there's now bills going through many, not only the Irish Parliament, I've seen it happen in other countries in Europe, to make your home basically state property. So that's why they want to know how many bedrooms you have, because how many Mulfasa, Islamabad, Ukrainian refugees can move in. This is the Bolshevik playbook. This is what the Bolsheviks do when they take control. And you know, those of you who laugh at people like me, I'm not bothered by it. People like us, have been proven time and time again. You even have your man, that doctor that was on, that does the needlecraft and the COVID reports, reading out today or yesterday on his channel. And this guy's got 2.5 million subscribers. That the Pfizer thing is a catastrophe. The number of side effects, 100 and something thousand side effects, serious side effects, are now listed in the Pfizer needlecraft. And then he says in the thing, well, we trusted and were told to, we all trusted that they were telling us the truth about the vaccine. No, sorry, doctor. There were many of us who said, no, sorry, we don't trust science. Because it's not a faith-based process, and secondly, we certainly don't trust companies like Pfizer and other pharmaceutical companies who are just been, especially with their record. But it's basically the worst case scenarios of the needlecraft is coming through. I think a friend of mine recently died from it. He was getting cancer treatment, but he was an a very nice man and an old-time socialist. But I know he would have been the first one to roll up his sleeve, because that's just the kind of way he is. A very lovely man, smart, intelligent man, gifted man. He suddenly went downhill real fast. I wonder, was it because of the foghorn leghorn? I don't know that for a fact. I'm just thinking about it. You can't operate on emotions. You can't operate on feelings. You can't make life decisions based on this. To allow someone, a stranger, to move into your home, and you're not being financially, well, even if you're financially being remunerated for it, either by a government check or paycheck, unless you know those persons really well and trust them, you can't let them into your home. You violated the boundary of your sacred space, your sanctuary. And especially with someone with a completely different foreign culture, you're letting yourself in for a lot of trouble. I know there's people who've let people in and had good experiences. But it's I'm sure that no matter what part of the world they came from, I'm sure very nice African people have come to live in people's houses, very nice Middle Easterners, Muslims. But it's a crapshoot. It's a crapshoot. Also, even if they're not bad people, so if they're refugees from somewhere like Yemen or Syria or Afghanistan, they're people who've been damaged by war, and they'll be in a kind of state or hyper vigilance and fight or flight. Now, do you want that around your kids in your own home? Do you even care enough about your kids to actually think that? Or was the emotional footage from the news report on the 6 o'clock news enough for you? Was that more important to you? Because you went with feelings, or you went with superficial emotions, and you didn't analyze the thing properly. It's like the Israeli thing. Someone sent me a link today, and it was, by the way, I'm not Jewish, but sent me, not that that matters, obviously. Anyway, it sent me a link today, and it was like, Irish lawmakers slam 70 years of Israeli apartheid. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. What the hell is this? And it's who you expect it to be. Sinn Féin, the ultimate communist, the ultimate Marxists, the ultimate Bolsheviks, anti-Irish, globalists, internationalists, and a coalition of left-wing psychotics like Trotskyites, like posh boy Boyd Barrett. And I'm thinking to myself, they don't speak on behalf of me. And then I think back, like, this whole thing, you're supposed to hate Israel. Well, firstly, Israel never did anything to me personally, okay? Secondly, I wish Ireland was more like Israel. I wish we did protect our own. I wish when Russian ships were off our waters that we actually had a decent enough military to blow them out of the fucking water. Or out of the sky, whoever they were. than to have fishermen go out there and embarrass us. The difference, the Israelis actually look after their people. We don't. We hand our country over to anyone who wants it. And we don't have Irish neutrality is a nauseating thing. It's not an honourable thing. It's cowardice. Our neutrality was never about staying out of other people's wars. Our neutrality was about never investing in the military and never really having any protection. That's what that was always about. Never about anything else. We've never since the foundation of the state. For a brief period, even World War II, we could probably protect ourselves, but before and after that, not. And they don't even pay the soldiers here properly. And they don't even have a decent missile defense system. We don't even have an air force. A few Cessnas in the Army Air Corps, a few helicopters. They don't even have a decent, it's and then we're told and then the Israelis are awful because they protect their people. Never done anything to me. Yeah, there are things that Israel has done that's horrible, absolutely horrible, and I do have a lot of sympathy for the Palestinians. But why don't you condemn other countries, Saudi Arabia and Yemen? They don't. Uh, the United States and Libya, they don't. They always go after the emotional thing. And again, if you're a Palestinian or whatever watching this, I don't have a problem. I do feel terrible what's happened there. Especially about when Obama, just before Obama came in, they launched an appalling attack on Gaza and the West Bank. And it was just savagery. But having said that, I wish Ireland could not be like Israel in that sense. I wish Ireland was like Israel in the sense it could take care of their people. That's what I mean. I learned a lot from being in Norway all those times. Norway can look after itself. We can't, okay? And this is now extended to every other aspect of our lives. We're totally at the mercy of any government. If Iceland wanted to invade Ireland, they could probably win. That's how bad it is. And that has filtered down through our entire society to people not even being taking care of their own homes. Well, give me house over to Ukrainian refugees, so I will. And even if the hot blonde Ukrainian comes in, it's not your job to work to give your home over to the Irish Refugee Council. It's if the governments are bringing them here, they're the ones who should be building or setting up good quality facilities for these immigrants or these refugees or whatever they are. That's I always lately I've been doing this thing that I promised myself I would never do, but I'm doing it. If I ruled Ireland, if I ruled Ireland, I would say I would look at some and if I could get proof there really was a huge humanitarian refugee crisis in Ukraine, I would say, okay, let's take some people in that we can manage. So if maybe 10,000, 15,000, and I would have a specially built facility somewhere near a large city like Dublin or Limerick or Cork, a good sized urban area anyway, that they could get easy commute back and forth easy to, so they're not isolated in the middle of nowhere. They would have excellent facilities that have like nice apartments, clean, taken care of, and looked after and treated with dignity. But I would specify they have to be actual Ukrainians, citizens born in the Ukraine, or had lived there all their lives, and not just anyone who showed up. Now, what is so evil about that? What is so evil about that? No, because what they do, they want to make your home the refugee camp. That's what they want to do. Now, let's talk about this further. Now, again, I'm not political, okay? I'm just looking at things from my stepping off the chessboard viewpoint. So that's why I said the thing about Israel. I quite like the way Israel defends itself, but I don't like the way it treats. Now and again, it has a bad history of people in Palestinians bad way. But so have a lot of the Arab countries as well have treated Palestine, like Lebanon and stuff like that. So let's not get stuck down on one bad guy or one bad thing and then take a side and say, I'm on his side, I'm on her side. Take off the skunk stanking Celtic jersey for once, okay? Now, in terms of our Rangers jersey, with McEwen spilled all over it. Now, or the Fosters, whatever. What did I drink? Yeah. What's the lager? McEwen's, and Tennant's. And let's look at let's use consideration here, okay? There's obviously an incursion, a military assault in the Ukraine going on against that country. Okay, and of course, in such situations, who suffers the most? Well, the average soldier suffers the most on both sides. But who's next to suffering? The civilian who signed up for nothing, okay, and finds themselves caught in the wheels of history, okay. Now, do you remember when the Rona first started? They told us it was a pandemic, and we looked at the pandemic. Now, a pandemic to me would be like what you would see in many countries when they had pandemics: people dead in the streets, morgues overflowing, graveyards filling up, bodies in massive storage. None of these things happened in 2020. So those of us who have intelligence said there's no pandemic. If there was, there'd be a huge issue with storing bodies, and that hasn't even been brought up. And then the TikTok nurses revealed the rest, okay? That the hospitals were not war zones. It was all lies. Now, and I'm not saying there was no coronavirus, I'm just saying that was all revealed. That they lied about this deadly pandemic wiping people out. On behalf of the big pharma companies to drum up sales, by the way. That's what your politicians did, you know. And at the same time, they're telling us now there are millions, and this is what I've actually read, there are millions of Ukrainian refugees, right? Now, and the country is being destroyed in a war. Now, firstly, I'm seeing almost no combat footage. Literally nothing. Nothing that any can, and I'm seeing, and then it's been shown that some that was combat were scenes from movies or wars that happened in Chechnya 15 years ago. So I'm seeing where there should be spectacular combat footage by now, if it's the way they said it is, and I'm seeing almost none. Secondly, we're told that there are millions of millions. This is not. They didn't say thousands. They didn't say hundreds. Millions of Ukrainian war refugees marching to the border. Well, anytime I see a group of refugees, it's a handful of 10 or 12, and half of them are dark-skinned. What? Where's the, and to bring that point home that we're not seeing images of millions of refugees, cast your mind back 5 years ago to when we had that convoy or whatever it was called of Arabs walking into Germany, and those spectacular footage of miles and miles of Arab males with cell phones taking selfies of themselves, looking very healthy and fashionable, walking through the Hungarian countryside on their way to Berlin. We saw those footages. They were real. We saw them at the train stations in Eastern Europe. We saw that footage. There was absolutely tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of Arabs walking into Germany. That could be confirmed by the TV report. I don't see any TV reports confirming there are millions of Romanian refugees at the border with Poland. I'm hearing journalists say it. I'm hearing governments say it. And then when you see a photograph of some like Irish person who's been rescued, there's 9 people around them. When you see a photograph of some British person that's rescued, there's like 6 people around them. There's certainly not millions. Not way. There's little or no combat footage. So I know there's the whole wag the dog thing and all that, but what's really going on here? Well, we maybe have emerging clarity now. To my fucking amazement, it's now been confirmed that the US has bioweapon labs all over the Ukraine. That the US, directly funded by the Biden administration, had built bioweapons labs all over the Ukraine. When under oath, when American lawmakers and bureaucrats were asked, are there bioweapons belonging to the US in the Ukraine? As late as last week, they said, no, but there are research facilities. It's starting to look, although I'm not clever and intelligent enough to know this, that the Biden government was building biolabs in the Ukraine with the express purpose of, if it came to it, unleashing biological warfare upon the Russian state. And the Russian invasion, and fact checkers will tell you it's not true, but it is. They've even said it, that they invaded the Ukraine because of what the US, the Biden administration, and possibly Biden's son were involved in the funding and setting up of bioweapons labs on their borders. Could you imagine if Ireland started building bioweapons labs next to Northern Ireland and nowhere else? Could you imagine if Mexico started building bioweapons labs next to Texas and nowhere else? How those countries would react? They would react exactly the same way as Russia has just reacted. They would say, shut them down or we'll send in the military. Clarity is emerging. I'm not saying the Russians are good guys here. I'm not saying anything. I don't know enough. But I do know it's now been absolutely confirmed that the primary reason for the Russian assault on Ukraine was Joe Biden and possibly his own son being heavily involved in the financing, funding, and setting up of biological weapons laboratories on the Ukraine-Russian border with the absolutely designed that if something went wrong, it would kill or could be used against Russians. And now I'm starting to wonder if Wuhan, if this has always been the case, and perhaps the original coronavirus leak happen from a Ukrainian lab. That's a huge stretch, I know that. I'm just blowing smoke here out my ass. I'm just throwing things to the wind. Don't quote me on it that I said it's a fact. Yellow and blue, folks, from start to end. All the world is a fucking stage, and right now there's a yellow. Last 3 years, it's been a yellow and blue curtain. We're starting to see who's actually pulling the curtain open and why. And I can stand at exit stage left is potentially the president of the United States' dirtbag son involved in some of the most wicked stuff imaginable. Watch this space. You have dog! Dog is rat!